In this video, I want to talk about domain and range. So the domain are your x values and your range are your y values. Okay. So for example, in this case, if they want us to find the domain, we just look at the values on the x-axis. So notice that here that the x value starts at -2 and ends at +2. So you always want to go from least to greatest. Again, you always want to go from least to greatest. So the domain, right, where is it defined at, starts at -2, and it's also defined all the way to +2. So we would write this as the domain would be from -2 to +2. Now, let's look at the range. Okay, the range is also the same thing, right? The the lowest value for the y value is -2, and the highest value is +2. So that will be also my range. Okay. Now, how do we know when we need to put brackets or parentheses? So remember, brackets look something like this, and parentheses look something like this. Well, when we have brackets, that means the endpoints are included. All right. So in this case, when we have brackets, that tells us that the endpoints, okay, are included. All right. Now, when we have parentheses, that means the endpoints are not included. Okay. So when you have parentheses, the endpoints are not included. If you have brackets, that means the endpoints are included. So in this case, how do we know if the endpoints are included or not? Notice that every part of this circle, all right, is defined. That means that it's everything is marked, right? There's no open circles or any gaps or anything like that. Okay. So in this case, for the domain, which is the x values, right, we're going to have um, brackets there. So I'm going to put brackets there. That means, again, that the endpoints are included. In regards to the range, right, it's the same thing. There's no holes, there's no gaps or anything like that. So that means that the range, right, uh, also has brackets. Now let's look at this one here. So same thing, we need to find the domain and range of this graph. So the domain, let's look at the domain here. The domain are your x values, your starting and where your ending points are. Well, notice this is a parabola. So that means that this, the left side of the graph here, right, this arrow indicates it's going to go on forever to negative infinity, okay? And the right side, the arrow indicates that it's going to go forever in the positive direction or positive infinity. So the domain in this case goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. So that's what we would write. Okay. Now let's look at the range. So the range are your y values. So here the range starts at 0. And again, we have this arrow indicating goes up in the positive direction, all right, towards infinity. So we can say the range goes from 0 to positive infinity. Now, whenever we have infinity or negative infinity, okay, the we're always going to write the parentheses, okay, because we don't really know much about infinity or negative infinity, okay. So we will always write parentheses whenever we write that down there, all right. for the range here, the 0 is going to be included again because there's no holes or any gaps like that. So we're going to put a bracket there. And then for the range, so it goes from 0 to positive infinity. Again, this will be a parentheses for the infinity sign there. Okay. All right. So this will be my domain and range for this graph here. Now, sometimes in the book, all right, it will tell you when we have something that goes from negative infinity to positive infinity, sometimes you'll see the symbol that looks something like this. It looks like an R with two vertical lines. Okay, that means all real numbers, right? So this means all real numbers. Okay. So again, whenever you see that symbol, that just means all real numbers. So everything in the number line works. All right. Now, how about here? What's going to be our domain and our range here? Well, the domain starts at -3 and it goes on forever in the positive direction. So that goes to infinity. Okay. Now here it's really hard to tell. But if we just have a parabola, it looks like a parabola. Again, it's just going to go, it goes in the negative direction, infinite, all right, negative infinity, and then it goes in the positive direction, positive infinity. So we would just say it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity in regards to the range of this graph. All right, so here we would write parentheses here, and then for a -3, we'll have a bracket, and again here we'll have a parentheses. All right, now if we say had asymptotes, so let's say that there was an asymptote here that goes like this, right? There's an asymptote that goes like that as well. So let's say this was +4 and down here it's -4, right? So what an asymptote is like a wall, okay? So the graph can never touch that wall and can never cross that wall, all right? So again, if there was parentheses here, asymptote here, then that means that the endpoints we won't include because again, one of the characteristics of a horizontal asymptote is that the graph can never touch it or cross it. So in this case, if this was say the range, all right, then we would have from -4, right? We'll go from -4 to +4. And we would put parentheses because again, it can never be included. All right. Now, another graph that I want to mention real quick is if we have something like this. So go to the next page here. So let's say we have just a couple points. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So let's say we have, say, this point, and then say this point, and then this point here, or something. Okay. So this point here, that's going to say be 1, 1, 1. This point here says 2, 3. And then this point here is -2, +3. All right. So what will be the domain and range? Well, when we have a list of points, just like this one, then we would have to write the domain and range as a list of points as well. Okay. So what do I mean by that? So my domain, so in this case, the domain are your x values. So that would be -2, +2, and 1. All right. Again, it doesn't have to be in order from least to greatest. You can put them in order if you want, but it doesn't have to be. So when we list them down, so I'll just have -2, +2, and 1. In this case, we're not going to write parentheses or brackets, but we're going to have some kind of set notation that looks something like this. Okay, so that means that's just a list of numbers. Same thing here. Okay, we're going to have that same notation here. And in this case, the range are just going to be your y values. So that's just going to be 3, 3, and 1. Now, if the number repeats itself, we don't have to write it more than one time. We can just write it one time. So I'm going to write 3 and then +1. Because again, 3 repeats itself. I don't have to write it more than one time. Right? So this is when you have isolated points, then you would list the points down. When they're not isolated, just like this, you have a smooth curve or something like this, then you would just write the beginning and ending of those particular point, and all those points in between means they're included. Okay. So sometimes another thing I want to point out here is that sometimes students have a hard time, where do they start for the domain? Where do they start for the range? So one of the things I like to tell my students is if you draw a TV box, I call it a TV box, around your graph. So if I were to draw a box, say from here, 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 okay, it's just a sketch, right? So I just draw my antenna there, all right? So this box is telling you, this TV box is telling you where the bottom of that graph is and where the highest point of the graph is. And same thing for the left and right here. This will tell you the most left and the most right. All right, so if that helps you visually to figure out how to find the domain range, wonderful. Okay, but I know some students like drawing it so they know exactly what's the lowest point, what's the highest point, and vice versa. Okay.